Well, hey, hopefully I look a little bit more relaxed than usual. That's because I just got back from a trip that I waited way too long to take with family. Take a listen to this episode where we talk about all the missed opportunities that we often have just to focus on our families, to make memories, and to also build on traditions in our life. Jump on in with us and check it out.
Hello, everybody. Here we are, Remnant Revealed. Man, this is like 80-some
It's
podcasts?
a whole bunch.
It's a bunch of them, ain't it? It's a bunch of them. We got a few.
Yeah, man.
Hey, you know what the fork said to the chocolate cake?
What's that?
You want a piece of me?
Wow. That's pretty good.
I couldn't help it.
So I'm just going to share this. I'm going to tell people right now. You were a little cranky this morning.
I was?
Yep. I know you don't like people to know that.
No,
Now, you know what? I take that back.
Yeah.
You were not a little cranky. You were a lot cranky.
Wasn't I a lot cranky?
That's why I call you Frank the Crank.
Yeah, Frank the Crank.
Yeah, but you're a little.
I've been putting in some days. I've been several mornings getting up at like 3:30 and hitting it to make. What's the deal with these surgeons and physicians always having to put surgeries at like dark 30 in the morning?
So they can make their tea time in the afternoon.
It must be.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, or so they can get enough surgeries in to make all that money. I don't know what the deal was, but
you're on their time.
This has been a week of very, very early.
Yeah, you go in and pray with folks before surgery and things like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or even, I mean, if it's a smaller surgery or something like that, I'll at least call them and pray with them as they're going in, just for peace and strength. And I've always done that.
Yeah.
Just helps people know.
Sure.
So, or you get called out sometimes,
That
chaplains get called out in the middle of the night or have an issue that you need to go help with. And so officers can do their part and their job. And
so when you go and do that, are you cranky then too?
No.
Okay.
No.
So you can set it aside.
Well, it's just like right now. You've got, I mean, don't we always set aside what we're going through to get the job done or take care of business or help other people? So most of the time people don't really know what you're going through because you're normally helping them in what they're going through.
And unfortunately, a lot of times they don't care what you're doing.
And when I'm with you, I'm having to really help you a lot because you're just
overtime.
You're a mess.
Overtime.
you've always got something going on. But the biggest thing is really trying to make sure that you don't keep doing that until you totally run out of gas.
Well, you notice I'm a whole lot more chipper than you are.
I noticed that today. Usually this is reversed.
So, hey, but do you know why?
The grumpy old men sitting. Remember that movie? What was that? The grumpy.
It was old men.
Old
plural.
men. Oh, I thought it was the grumpy old man.
Both of them together. Not one. Anyways, the reason why I am a little more joyful is for the first time in many years, I was able to get away and have a little time off and spend time with family.
Wow. Awesome.
Which was very awesome.
That is awesome.
And we had a great trip.
Did you?
My wife and I, we've done this with our daughters, and now we're doing it with our grandkids.
Okay.
So when our girls were younger, about the time they were 13, 14 years old, what we would do is say, listen, it was almost like a coming of age thing, right? So we'd say, hey, listen, you pick this summer anywhere you want to go in the United States.
Oh, wow.
And mom and dad and just you will go on a trip.
Oh, so
to the place that you want to go to and hang out for some days.
Okay.
So our oldest daughter, we did New York, Manhattan, Broadway shows, the whole
deal.
And it was great.
Yeah.
Our youngest daughter wanted to do South Dakota, Mount Rushmore.
No kidding.
All that. awesome time.
Hey, good,
awesome
pretty good picks. Yeah,
right. And then so now we have our grandson, and he's 14, and said, "Where do you want to go?" And he said, "I think I want to do Yellowstone."
No way.
Yeah, and I said Yellowstone because we've never been there.
No, I haven't either.
So he hadn't heard us
I've
talk
flown
about
over it, but I've never,
any of that stuff. So he said, "Yeah." He said, "I think that's what I want to do for my trip." And
wow.
And we said, "Okay." But I said, "Well, why do you want to do Yellowstone?" He says, "I don't know. I've always wanted to go fly fishing, and I want to go fly fishing in Yellowstone."
So
there, right?
Yeah.
So we set it all up. We did the trip, and it was about 10, 11 days. And we started. You've never been there?
No, I've flown over it many times, but I've never actually been to it. You know, everybody points, that's Yellowstone.
I had never been to it. I had never been there, but so we stumbled through it, talked to different folks who knew a lot about it. Well, Bill Westfall, who's been on this show.
Right.
People forget he used to live and work in Montana.
Right.
And so he's very familiar with it. So I got some insights from him and thoughts on how to do the trip. And so we spent the first week up in Yellowstone on the northern part. So we stayed in an area called Gardner, Montana.
All right.
Which is at the north gate
that's on your
of the park. And then the second week or second half of the trip, we then moved down and spent days down in the Grand Tetons, south of the Yellowstone National Park.
Yeah.
And man, it was a fantastic trip. I mean, it was great. So up in Yellowstone, we got it set up where we had a guide to take us out fly fishing.
Yeah.
We used, I brought this. This is a sticker from there, but it's Parks Fly Shop. I don't know if we can get that on there.
Yeah.
But Parks Fly Shop in Gardner, Montana.
And so there's you and Liam and the guy.
And so
Liam's grown a lot. He's pretty big in that picture.
And so we set it up. We went out. It was just the guide and us, which was really cool. I thought there'd be other people. But our guide's name was Trevor, so shout out to Trevor.
Trevor.
He was
excellent. Thanks, man.
He did an awesome job and really set it up perfect for, a 14-year-old,
right?
Young man. And we went out and hiked into the streams. So it was about it was a good distance in.
So I remember one other time that you and I talked about you hiking, and you were totally out of breath, totally sweating.
Well, there was a difference. They set me up. They said it was a hike.
Yeah.
And it was not a hike. It was a climb.
It was a
mountain climb.
Yeah, it's like the
very different.
The peaks of Dover, the wall of Dover.
Very different. So we hiked in. We fished the streams. He caught trout after trout after trout. Had a great time.
You sent me some pictures. They were
hiked
beautiful.
Back out. Yeah. So but we did it all there. Saw all the sights, and we went horseback riding in the Tetons, and
oh my.
We kayaked across an active volcano, which is the Yellowstone Lake.
Yeah.
And we also did a river float through Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and it was just a great trip.
Did you get in? Do they let you get into any of the steamed water? Are there places where you can?
Well, in theory, you could.
Yeah.
Like
thermal.
Yellowstone. That's what's coming. That's what the lake is.
Yeah.
And so you kayak up against those geysers and the water flowing back into the lake, and it was really cool to see. Plus it was kayaking, so it was peaceful. You had the whole lake. That lake. Now so you've been to the Sea of Galilee, right?
Correct.
And you said that's really like a lake, is it?
Yeah,
not?
it is a lake.
They call it a sea, but it's really
a lake. Yeah.
I don't even know. Maybe we could look it up what the size of that is.
8 by 15 miles.
Is that what it is? Yeah. Yellowstone Lake, I think he said, was 7 miles by 27 miles.
Yeah, so it'd be very similar in size.
So I just wondered about that when we were on it, because I got to thinking about that. And I was thinking about all the views and, of course, the mountains and everything. Here's the thing. For me, I always knew that it was a great place to go. It looked wonderful, right? But, man, you don't know till you get there and see.
Yeah.
I mean, it is just
breathtaking, is what I've heard.
And we had the chance to talk about that. So we do the trip, we have a good time, but we also have the chance all the way through to be talking about God's Word, His creation, taking that in, and just appreciating it and not taking it for granted. So if you ever go to Yellowstone and you want to go fly fishing, I would say go to Parks Fly Shop, look up Trevor, and
tell him what you want to do.
He'll take you out, and you'll have a great, great trip. It was a great blessing.
That's good. So what did that do for you? What did that do for you personally? Let's talk. I know you don't like to talk about stuff but really, there was more purpose. A lot of times we need to understand there's a greater purpose to get away and get out of the noise of life that we are in every single day. And even if it's do something different, sometimes it can be a 30-minute thing. Sometimes it can be a couple of weeks of vacation. But you need to get away. Officers need to get away. Jesus got away. The Son of God, filled with the Spirit of God to the fullness, still he was incarnate. He was still in his body. And his body had to get away, and his mind to recharge, or
he still felt the human stresses, right, of life, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think one thing you heard me say, it's been many, many, many years, and that's no exaggeration,
right?
Because it always feels so difficult to get away in what we do, and I think we fall into this trap. So many people are depending on me, and I think officers think that too. My beat partners, my fellow coworkers, the areas that I serve, the neighborhoods, my family. But isn't it interesting? We usually put the family second to all of the other stuff and all the other people.
Pastors are majorly guilty of the same thing.
Well, and
sadly.
then when we tie in, you're called to do this, and you absorb that and grab hold of that, then you feel like, well, if that's what I'm called to do, I'm shirking my responsibilities by stepping away from that to go take a break. But I think to your point, what is interesting is that is what Jesus would do. It's documented time and time again in the Bible that he would do the work and then he would get away. But he would get away to do what? That was the key. He would get away to be with the Father.
That's right.
To pray.
To recharge.
And to recharge. And then he would come back off the mountain. He'd come back from the lake, all the same things, and go back at it again.
Pop himself back in service.
Really a great model, but I'm probably one of the worst at managing that. Now, I said one of the worst because the other one I know is you.
Hey.
And as I share with you,
I didn't throw any rocks at you yet.
You need to learn to manage your time rather than your time managing you.
Oh, my Lord.
Right?
Here we go.
But
this is the kettle calling the pot black for sure.
What did it do for me? Well, there were a couple of different things. One is it did allow me to recharge. It gave me something else to focus on. I always feel like a trip like that allows you to step back a little bit from life and really kind of get some perspective.
Right.
And when you go out there, you're in those mountains, in that vast area, forest, park. And it reminds you that what I like about it is it reminds you how small you are. And in the big scheme of things, you're very small and you're here for a very short period of time.
Right.
And what you're doing is very important, but in the big scheme of things, you can take a break for a minute.
Yep.
This whole earth and world and God's creation won't fall apart without you for just a few minutes.
That's right. Yeah, if you become so important that it can't be done without you.
That's right.
You now have a messianic attitude.
That's right.
You have a Messiah, a Savior attitude about you that will absolutely take you down.
But how many times do we see officers suffer from that, pastors suffer from that?
Yep.
Because you feel like you're holding all this up, and so that was great for me. It was also really important because of what the trip was. It wasn't just a getaway. It wasn't just a vacation. This was focusing on one person in our family, which is what we love about it.
Right.
And showing them our love for them and building those memories. So with the girls, they would always talk about that trip, their trip,
right,
and the different things that we did and whatnot. And, now having done that a little bit, you realize how quick our kids move on in life.
Right.
So he's 14, and the whole time I was sitting there thinking about that, 3.5 years, he's 18 and moving, right? Moving on. And so
it's kind of a coming of age.
Absolutely.
And I did that with our sons too, and they've never forgotten it. But that coming of age moment in a young man, a young lady's life, it's not just like a birthday, because in their mind they're going to have more birthdays.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something very special about that moment when you gather around them and you talk about how proud you are of them, what a wonderful person they are, the gifts that you see inside of them, the callings of God they have. And all of a sudden their mind and their heart open up to you as a parent or a grandparent, and they realize that they truly are loved.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody speaking into my life, not just telling me where I'm missing it or what I've done wrong or what I'm not getting or what I still have to learn, but they're just speaking to who I am, not about what I do or what I'm going to do. And the Father God did that with Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "This is my Son in whom I am well pleased," in front of all the people that were gathered around him. He emboldened, blessed, and identified who he was and spoke to his being before he said anything about what he was doing or where he was going or what he would be to him personally.
Well, the other thing that was nice about it is it was an opportunity for us to show our grandson how much of a blessing he is to us, and in turn we were blessing him.
Yeah.
And here again, much like the Father does to all of us, right?
Yep.
And I think it's just one of those lifelong memories that you build.
Yeah.
And we have, tragically learned that tomorrow's not, guaranteed for any of us, in the here and now and in the flesh. And the one thing that I know is that taking the time out, removing yourselves from the day-to-day grind to go and do those trips, never regretted that. But then I think, man, had we not done those things, I would absolutely regret that.
Yeah.
And so I do think it's important for folks to take a moment and just contemplate that, give that some thought, and internalize that. And again, I want to keep stressing this. This was different than just we saved up and blew a whole bunch of money going to Mexico and drinking beer for 4 straight days and coming back home hungover.
Yeah.
Very different.
Yeah.
Not judging. I'm just saying a big difference.
It's not a recharge.
That's the point. And so that's really what it was. And it really did recharge me. It charged me back up to come back at it, not just for work, but also for life. And it also gave me an opportunity to really think, how can you be a better father, grandfather, husband, all those things. And so, and plus it was nice. It was nice doing that with my bride, and you're looking at your grandson who has come all this way. You're watching him grow up, become a man.
Yeah.
And it's an opportunity for us together, you together, to just take a moment and almost capture that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't want to forget those moments.
No.
I'm telling you.
Nope.
That's super cool.
And you saw some of the pictures from fishing, and you could see something different on his face, in terms of his joy and enjoying that. And I told him this was your dream, and you did it.
Yeah. And he's such an honorable young man that you could also see on his face the great respect and honor and blessing that his grandpa and grandma did that for him.
Yeah.
And he was with you, alone, all undivided attention.
That's right.
Not torn between other siblings or other people, just him and you.
Yeah.
And that's very, very special.
Yeah. So.
Yep. It marks your life. I always talk about, when I'm preaching sometimes, different stories, moments that mark your life forever. Every great leader has marked points. If you did their life on a timeline, you can find the marked points where their destiny was established or set by God through each of these little individual moments in life that they never forget. And it's just becomes stamped or woven into the fabric of their life. Changes them forever. For the next phase, then they get marked again. Next phase, marked again. So
what are you? Are you a beach guy, a mountain guy, a lake guy?
I'm a lake guy.
Lake guy.
I'm going fishing. Yeah. I'm a lake guy.
Yeah.
Yep,
I'm really like the mountains. I like the water too.
Well,
right?
Combined, because I'm a mountain boy, right?
Yeah,
Raised in the mountains of North Carolina. So the trout streams, the mountains. But there's something that just draws the stress out of me, seeing a mountain or mountains reflected on the water.
Yep.
That picture for me, one of the pictures you sent where you guys were on horseback. You took a picture of the lake under the mountains. Oh,
yeah.
I probably sat there and just stared at that picture for 30 minutes. Just my body aches to go there and see that now. I mean, you want to see that. I can't imagine what it looks like in person, and you get the feel and you get the sounds
yeah,
I really enjoy that.
It did make me think about that. I think, people talk about it, but I think sometimes it's a little overlooked by people when they're getting into the Bible and they're getting into it to get something out of it. Or they're going to a specific area that they've been told, hey, go and read this scripture because it speaks to what you're going through. But what's interesting is I think that woven through all these examples and all these things that occurred is it seemed like Jesus would do the work and then he would get away. He would do the work and then he would get away. He would heal someone and then he would go away. Yep. And it seemed like he had figured out the principle.
Oh, yeah.
Of recharging, charging yourself up, but also charging yourself up with the direct word from God, right? The Father. And I think it's something that we could draw upon in our own study of the word.
Oh, massive. This is a massive lesson.
I was thinking about in the book of Mark, in the first chapter, I thought about one line in there that made me think about it, but then I got to looking at the whole section, and it's in chapter 1 of Mark, but it starts in about verse 40, and it's where Jesus cleanses the leper.
Right.
Now, what struck me in that is he sees the leper, he's moved with compassion, right?
Right.
He then heals the leper.
Right.
He first asks him if he wants to be clean, right? And then when the leper states the faith to do so, to be clean, his desire to be clean, he does that. But then I notice in here it says that after he made him clean, it says, this is in the ESV version, it says, and Jesus sternly charged him and sent him away at once and said to him, see that you say nothing to anyone, but go show yourself to the priest and offer for your cleansing what Moses commanded for a proof to them. Mm-hmm. What that made me think of is officers do that all the time. Officers are I always like it when you see the news story about the officer that got somebody a can of gas to get to going again, and changed their tire on the side of the road.
Right.
Gave some money to the homeless guy to get something to eat, to do all these things. Somebody finds out about it, becomes this big news story, right?
Right.
And when that happens, usually one, the officer doesn't want to talk about it.
Right.
And then two, especially if their department says, oh no, this is a really good story.
Right.
Tell it. Invariably, every one of those officers will always say this because it's true. They usually always say, this happens hundreds of times a day all across this city.
Right.
And what they're saying is, this ain't just me. Right. Officers all over are doing these things, and invariably they all do the same thing. They give the guy, $10 to go and get some food, or go into the McDonald's and get some coffee, or buy him a breakfast sandwich or something. And then they'll usually say the same thing to him. Don't tell anybody I did this for you. right?
Right.
Because they don't want any credit. They don't want to know about it.
Right.
And it kind of reminds me of that when you read that in here. But the part that really speaks to this is the next verse. It says, but he went out and began to talk freely about it, meaning the leper. He went telling everybody, right?
Yeah, because once you've had something like that happen to you, you can't hide it. You don't want to hide it. You're like, okay, I won't tell you. Hey, everybody, it's this guy.
Yeah. And that's what it says. And it says, and to spread the news.
Yeah.
The good news, but spread the news. But here's the key part. So that Jesus could no longer openly enter a town, right? Our officers feel like that. Man, everywhere I go, people know I'm a cop.
Yeah.
You know, if
they want to ask me a question.
Exactly. Yeah. And to where they don't want to go to restaurants. They don't want to go out. They definitely don't want to be in crowds. And it says, but was out in the desolate places, meaning he didn't feel like he could go into the towns. And then instead he would stay out. He would stay out in the woods. He'd stay out in the desolate places, in the mountain, at the lake, whatever the case may be.
Right.
And I do like that about Jesus. He is my kind of guy.
Oh, yeah.
Likes to hang out in the mountains and hang out at the lake. And so I just think it's a great thing for people to hear, to reflect upon. And I guess I would just ask this. If it was good enough for Jesus, why wouldn't it be good enough for us?
Don't you think that might be a principle you should implement in your life? Mark chapter 3 and verse 7 says, but Jesus withdrew himself with his disciples to the sea. Mm-hmm. A great multitude from Galilee followed him from Judea. So they're, again, tying into the scripture you just read, they're following him everywhere. Sometimes you just can't get away from that draw. But he did. He found ways of withdrawing, getting away from the noise, getting away from the crowd to get re-energized. Now, officers do this all the time with radios.
Mm-hmm.
You got to recharge the battery of your. The worst thing to imagine for everybody, 911 operators and officers or their supervisors, is to have an officer out somewhere and all communication gets cut off because somebody didn't recharge their battery.
That's right.
Right?
Right.
Well, that happens spiritually and emotionally too.
No doubt.
If you don't recharge like you're talking about, but you have to pull away. You can't recharge. You got to take that radio out of service.
You've got to be intentional about it.
You got to be intentional about
right.
it. You have to plan that.
Deliberate.
And I'm telling you now, if you want to talk about distractions or something doing its best to stop you from doing that, it'll show up when you make a decision to do this principle we're talking about today.
You made me think. I got a buddy down in the Houston area, down in Texas, and they've recently had these huge storms from the hurricane and the byproducts of that, and they had flooding, unbelievable amounts of rain. But I checked on him, and just to make sure he was doing all right, and see if they got any damage or anything. But he shared with me, he actually said my neighborhood looks like a bomb went off in it. So they got quite a bit of damage. But he was pretty fortunate with his house. They only lost like a fence and big limbs down and things like that. But they were without power. Yeah. They lost all power in the neighborhood. And he said to me, what's interesting is that when all the power goes out, people forget about all the things they take for granted.
Oh, buddy.
So think about that. When you lose power in the natural, you forget or you suddenly remember the things that you've been forgetting about that you just take for granted.
That's right.
And I think that's kind of what it's like in life too, right?
Yep.
Is that when you hit when you hit the bottom, the major catastrophe happens in your life. It's usually in those times that you're reminded of the things that you've been neglecting or forgetting about or just taking for granted, like your family, like your spouse, like your children, and yourself, your own health, right? And another thing that was interesting is he said the cell service is really spotty, and I had to like walk a half mile out of my neighborhood area just to get a signal. Same thing, you lose the cell coverage, the communication ability, and then also, if you hadn't been charging your phone, you're in trouble real quick, even if you got a signal. you can't use the phone.
Yep.
But I like this. He said that generator that I got last year was worth every penny. So we have power and are very lucky.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me say that again. Now just think about what we've been talking about.
Yes, sir.
Now apply this natural thing to the supernatural and to your spirit life.
That's right.
That generator I got last year, prepared for it.
Yep.
Got what he needed to generate the power, which I would suggest is much like this book, right?
Yep.
And then it says that it was worth every penny. No regrets.
No regrets.
Right? Worth everything I put into it.
Yep.
And we have power, so we are very lucky.
Yeah, God.
Fortunate.
The word says, my word is spirit and life.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have life in any electronics without the spirit, which is, of course, power or electricity to that piece of product. You can run around, push your vacuum cleaner all day long till your shoulder hurts, but if you don't plug it into the wall, it hasn't done its job.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to function right. It's not going to perform right.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with us as a human being. If we're not plugged in and we run out or we don't connect at all, vacuum cleaner, you aren't connected at all.
Mm-hmm.
Cell phone, radios, anything that's rechargeable, hey, you may have it for a while, but it's called a rechargeable battery for a reason.
Well, and isn't it interesting that when these storms happen, these natural storms in life, the hurricanes, the tornadoes, all those things, especially if they know they're coming, like the hurricanes.
Right.
I read a story where H-E-B, it's a big grocery chain down south and in Texas and whatnot. Yeah. By the way, they became a model for how to handle critical incidents out of the pandemic.
Wow.
There's a whole study on how H-E-B was already prepared and had plans for how to distribute food, keep their stores running, and feed the people in the middle of a disaster. Something to look at. Google that.
Something to think about.
It's really interesting. But isn't it ironic and something to really think about that when people know the storms are coming, what do? They run out and prepare.
Oh, yeah.
They buy all these generators. You can't find a generator to save your life, literally. Nope. You can't find bottled water anywhere.
Plywood.
Right? Plywood to cover the wind.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people look at that and they think, well, man, you live in that area. You know that happens a lot. Why wouldn't you have had those things already?
Right.
Why wouldn't you have already prepared rather than scrambling around when the storm is coming? And then you have those folks that when they don't know the storm's coming, it happens.
And they're
scrambling to try to get those things. Yep. That really is what it's like.
Right. I think most people, and it's just like when you're talking to a teenager that's about to train wreck their life, or a young adult, or an adult that's train wrecking, most people don't believe it's going to happen to them.
Mm.
And so they don't prepare because they have no faith in it could happen to me. There's no belief that I'm going to be the one that's going to suffer. So it's going to happen to everybody else, but I don't really need to prepare because it's not going to happen to me.
Well, one of the things we did on this trip is we did the fly fishing. We did all the fun things. We did that stuff. But before we left the Yellowstone area, before we left this Gardner, Montana area, I took our grandson back to the area where we went fly fishing.
Okay.
It was actually the trailhead.
So you walked back up to it?
Well, no, we just went to the trailhead where we hiked back in to get to these streams.
Where it started, yeah.
But I did that on purpose. Took him back to that trailhead, and there I gave him a Bible.
Yeah.
Where I had wrote a message in there to him about our time together. So he would have that. My hope is that he treasures it.
Sure.
And long after I'm gone, he still has that.
Right.
But he's also got that connection to that spot, one place in the world that he could go back to.
That's
or
right.
He could take his son to, his grandson to, his daughter to, and talk about, I came here with my papaw. We did these things. He gave me a Bible here, hopefully is what he's talking about.
I still read it today.
And points them to the Word of God.
That's awesome.
You see what I'm saying? So my hope was that out of that, you were just talking about when you're talking to a teenager who's crashing their life, basically.
Right.
My hope was trying to do a little bit of the preparing part
and that's
ahead of time.
Yeah, the preemptive is always better.
Right.
I get the mercy of God.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's the grace of God that can function where mercy isn't needed because that person has allowed grace to enter their life first.
And we've talked about it. Grace empowers you.
Heaven's help
to make it through the issues of life. It. And so hopefully that's what he got.
And that is, I'm telling you, what a tremendous gift from someone who's already very significant in your life. And he will. I guarantee he'll cling to that. He'll read it. He'll talk about. He will remember every bit of that and just never forget it.
One of the things we did.
It'll serve him well.
My dad and I, he's now gone on to be with the Lord.
Yeah.
But he was a huge NASCAR fan, and Indianapolis, got the Indianapolis 500 track, the Motor Speedway, all those things.
Right.
But we also have the Brickyard 400, which is a NASCAR race, right? Mm-hmm. And so I took him to a NASCAR race, and we did the whole bit in the track and everything. And it was just it was a great day. He was on cloud nine.
I bet he was.
His favorite driver won the race.
Oh, really?
We went down and watched him in the winner's circle. Anyways, so we do the whole race, and we had bought commemorative Brickyard 400 ball caps for that race that year. And so his driver wins the race. We're down by the winner's circle watching him. And I said something about trying to get him to sign Dad's hat.
Yeah.
Right? And get emotional thinking about it. And here's his dream, his guy, the whole thing. Has a chance to get him to sign his hat.
Right.
And I said, come on, let's do that. And he said, I don't think I want to do that. I said, what? He said, I don't think I want to do that. I said, why not? He said, I think I'd rather have you sign my hat.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so I was like, what? What are you talking about? He said, no, I'd rather have you sign my hat. And so that's what we did. We signed each other's hats.
Yeah.
And I still have that. Treasure that.
Sure.
Yeah. And also what it taught me in that moment, right? The superheroes of life, the athletes, the stars, all those other
all
things,
that stuff, yeah.
They're not our heroes.
No.
And but you're surrounded by them with family.
Yeah.
Right? And why are you flashing a knife at me?
I flashed that knife because that was given to me by my father.
There you go.
Carry it with me every day.
Yeah. And so now fast forward, right?
Yeah.
So we signed each other's hats. We've kept them. I got his back, after he passed.
Yeah.
I've got it. And so you don't forget those things.
You don't.
Here we are. We're Liam and I each got a hat from Parks Fly Shop there in Montana, kind of to remember our fly fishing trip and everything.
Yeah.
So I tell him this story with my dad, and so then that's what we ended up doing, signing each other's hats and had those. So, those things you can't buy.
You cannot.
You can't replicate it. You can't reproduce it.
No.
But boy, you would sure regret it if you don't make the time to go and do those things.
That's
right. I guess that's what I would try to encourage people to think about who are listening to this. I try not to get too emotional about things, but I cry at anything. But those things, I hope you can see how much that moves me just thinking about that.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't trade that for anything.
Nope.
So I guess my question is, are we doing the things and making the time and making the efforts, being deliberate and intentional about making these memories with the ones that we love so much.
Yeah.
And at the same time, in doing that, are we making the deliberate steps, taking the deliberate steps to, in that moment, also both reflect on the great promises and love of God the Father for us?
Yeah. So we're talking about recharging, and we're talking about moments in time, moments in life that you can go back to that continue to recharge you and move you forward, those memories of those things. And, you know, Jesus did the greatest one ever.
That's right.
And he says, somebody listening may call it the Eucharist, somebody may call it communion, somebody may call it the communion table.
The Last Supper.
The Last Supper. But he says, as oft as you do this, do it in remembrance of me.
Yeah.
So even Jesus left something for us to have that we could recharge. One, and we've been talking about going away, taking time off, getting some time away, getting our mind recharged. Totally the right thing to do. But while you're doing that, remember who gave his life for you.
Remember him.
Remember him. Remember what he did. And that's what he was saying. Spiritually, if you'll let me into your life, I'll recharge you every time you remember me.
He's the generator.
He's the generator. That's right. It was funny you mentioned that you mentioned that in Houston, because this week I talked to a pastor who's also a police chaplain in Houston. Had some health issues, had to take some time away for surgery. But he's doing all of his pastoral phone calls in the parking lot of a grocery store, because that's the only place he can get a signal, because everything's down.
Yeah.
And I mean, it got hit hard.
Yeah.
But that recharge is so important. And those significant moments in time that you build with your children, your grandchildren, where it's just each individual little moment that recharges them, recharges you, you're building a legacy.
Yeah, man.
That's just precious.
And I guess my words of encouragement would be, don't dismiss the opportunities to do those things. That's so easy to do.
Don't take it for granted.
That's right. And, all good things are worth the effort. And so it was a great time. I think it was another great lesson to me in life. And as you grow and you age and learn a little bit more, I just hope that blesses somebody else and maybe encourages them to take a few moments, even for themselves, to get away, to withdraw, recharge with the Word and the Father.
Very, very good.
The Bible would always talk about Jesus doing that, and he would get away, and it would talk about the disciples. He's away again and praying by himself and whatnot. I did notice that there is one time, though, that Jesus is very deliberate and almost in a rush, and that is to get to Jerusalem to complete what he came to do. That's when he got on fire, set his face like flint.
Not be deterred.
And took off for it, right, with everything he had. But that was done after all the preparation.
That's right.
So there's still going to be the times where our officers charge into the moment, the incident, handle
long
business.
Long hours, got to do what you got to do. But
make sacrifice, do all those things. But the success of that work, those efforts, come from the times that you withdraw, spend time with God, and prepare yourself to be ready in that moment. Just like this guy said, because of that, we have power.
That's right.
And we're very lucky.
Yep.
That's it, man.
Very blessed.
Good stuff.
Man, that's awesome. That's really good. Worst thing to do is to go try to get something started and running, and it's on empty. I do not. Quarter of a tank of gas is empty in my house.
Yeah.
You don't go below a quarter.
Yeah.
You go fill up. So, man, what a great podcast.
Yeah.
What
a
stuff, great.
Man.
I hope you guys have enjoyed it, because we sure have. And
thanks for letting me share some of my personal stuff there.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
No, really good. Listen, that's what's important.
Yeah.
Right? We can talk so far out of all the theoretical things and all the really the nuts and bolts of real life is our real life experiences that we share.
Yeah.
That people find how the Word of God works, not theoretically, but practically in our life every day.
Yeah. And instead of trying to get that sports figure or somebody like that to sign your hat, get your loved ones to give you their autograph.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's a good deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
pretty good life lesson.
Just a great life lesson. Awesome.
Well, thanks,
thank
man.
you. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
It's been a great day.
Good stuff.
Would you sign my forehead?
With a Sharpie. Permanent.
Yeah,
Frank the Crank. See, you're laughing now. That's good.
I am. Bless you guys. Thanks for coming on here with us. Hit the bell, subscribe, tell a friend about the program, and we love you. There's nothing you can do about it. Hey, thanks for joining us today. Rick and I trust that you heard something that will help your life, and if you believe that it would help others, please make sure and share. Like and subscribe and hit that bell so that you can be notified when the next podcast is available. God bless you, and we'll see you soon.